Here's a question for you. What's cooler than an Archangel Planeswalker who travels the entire multiverse as a hero trying to stop all forces of evil everywhere? The answer, spoiler, is nothing. And that's why today I want to talk to you about Elspeth, the holy warrior plagued by a dark history of slavery, oppression, and so many sacrifices. Hell yeah, man, I'm really stoked to finally talk about her and learn what it is that made Elspeth one of New Phyrexia's greatest enemies, and there is so much to talk about with her outside of that too. Elspeth, arise. Before Elspeth was a knight, before she was a planeswalker, and long before she ever became an angel, she was simply a child living on a peaceful world. Capenna. Not New Capenna yet, like it's still the same place, just different times, you know? And at that specific time, it was a thriving civilization built by angels and protected from a simply unimaginable threat, the Phyrexians. And in case you're curious, it's actually been theorized that the angels of Old Capenna were actually refugees from Serra's realm, a powerful archangel who got her entire plane destroyed because she just had to help Urza while he was on the run from the weird mechano-buck flesh thing that, you know, Yawgmoth was making. And as we learned in the Urza video, wherever Urza goes and whatever he touches, it's gonna get destroyed by Phyrexia. Which then was exactly what happened to Serra's plane. Now, Elspeth was none the wiser until those freaking things showed up to slaughter all of Capenna as well. Beings of cosmic biomechanical horror invaded Elspeth's home plane, and they were not conquerors. They didn't come to claim the lands here. They came to hunt. And unfortunately for the angel warrior baddie to be yet, Elspeth was actually captured here as a child. She was forced to grow up inside what was effectively a nightmare laboratory, which is not the same as Dexter's laboratory, which I just recently learned was a whole thing for another video on my other channel. And I'm actually gonna try something new in this video because I know a lot of comments I get ask where I learned the lore and why I seem to skip over certain chunks, so straight up, I can't cover all the lore for every single planeswalker without making all these videos like at least 3 hours or more likely 5 or 10 hours long. So out of respect for your own time and that of my team, I kind of like to leave you guys some room to explore more of these stories in greater detail yourself, but I kind of realized recently I haven't really given you a chance to like easily find some of the lore. So we can actually see this moment specifically of Elspeth's life in the story The Lost Confession here, where Elspeth describes the memory of this time with, quite frankly, a lot of pungent detail. She recalls the smell of oil and metal, the sound of screaming and torn flesh, and the terrifying understanding that the monsters around her could reshape bodies at will at any time. Now, in case you're wondering, needless to say, that's a little bit too much for a little girl, and it kind of messed her up pretty badly. But nonetheless, she had hope. She knew that out there, somewhere, there must be a better world than this. And in a very thematically fitting moment for her character, this belief became reality. At some point during her tragic and traumatic captivity, something inside Elspeth awakened. Now say it with me, everyone. Her planeswalker spark ignited. Hey, now lots of very scary stress and blind hope turns out does some wonders for a kid, and in a glimmer of shining light, she just vanished. And with her first planeswalk, she landed on Theros, a place where she'd actually find herself going on quite the bogus journey later on in her story. We'll get to it, but we aren't quite there yet. Instead, at that early point in the story, she kind of kept hopping planes for many years until she found some stability on the shard of Bant, one of the 5 regions of the plane Alara. You know, where all the shards are named after certain color combinations you can play in the game. Now, Bant specifically is like super duper important because culturally, it kind of rips, dude. Like, it's almost the exact opposite of Phyrexia. Phyrexia is this brutal and industrial, cold and messed up place, while Bant is noble, orderly, all about honor and, good vibes. In other words, for Elspeth, Bant was absolute paradise on Earth, or paradise in the multiverse, you get it. The entire society revolved around chivalry and knights and cool stuff like that. We could probably build a pretty cool knight Bant deck around Elspeth specifically if we wanted. That'd be fun. Maybe we should make a stream or something doing that. But anyhows, knights competed in honorable combat to gain recognition from angels who served as divine keepers of justice and morality. And to kind of go up in the world here, you fight good and wink baddies give you big props. And as anyone in her shoes would do, at least I know I would, Elspeth decided to start climbing that ladder, baby. And Knight Elspeth was finally born here, and she freaking crushed it, of course, because she was very gifted by nature. But the other reason she did really well was actually kind of sad, man, because she fought like someone who had already seen the worst that this universe or multiverse could offer, and it very clearly had strongly shaped her personality. And as you can imagine, her skill and bravery very quickly earned her some recognition, and eventually Elspeth rose high enough in Bant society to become one of its most respected warriors. She truly embodied the virtues that Bant valued the most: courage, honor, and protection of the innocent. And that's why she clicked very decently with the one and only, well, a Johnny Goldmane, who at this point had also accidentally planeswalked his way into Bant after taking some pretty heavy damage in a big fight that you can hear about in my A Johnny video that's also on the channel and has done surprisingly good. Didn't know people loved A Johnny that much, but I love to see it. So yeah, they clicked, or at least she thought they did, but was actually sorely mistaken. They got into a little bit of a squabble, then A Johnny just dipped, and he warned that something strange and dire was happening in Alara at this point. And maybe because of that kind of ominous statement, or maybe just because of her past, even while living in this paradise place and this new state of bliss, something inside of Elspeth just never fully relaxed, right? Because out there, the Phyrexians were still lingering, slaughtering, and inching closer and closer back towards her. Not to mention that as she grew, she realized that Bant wasn't that good and perfect. In fact, it was pretty flawed. Big shocker, huh? If you've ever moved to another place or lived in another country and you're kind of very much in love at first sight, sooner or later you find out that yes, every place and every society has some issues. I mean, let's look at it, right? Knights gained power through rank, and rank was tied to combat and recognition. So that meant political manipulation still very much existed, hidden beneath the surface of all that noble stuff, it's kind of like a nice front for everything. And eventually, Elspeth began to question whether Bant's idea of honor truly protected people the way that she had always believed and hoped. You see, you might be curious at this point, Alara was originally a single world or a single plane that at some point had been split into 5 separate shards of mana. Bant, of course, was only one of those fragments, and as time went on, the barrier separating these different shards actually began to weaken. If you're curious, this event is actually known as the conflux, where shards began to re-merge. So logically, creatures and forces from the other shards started bleeding into Bant's territory, and all the peaceful knights started slaying demons, dragons, and I don't know, probably some other messed up stuff from inside the other shards. And of course, Elspeth still did her best to try and protect Bant, but she realized it was pretty much just like old Capenna. Invading forces, yet again, were destroying her homeworld. And this got a lot worse when her squire, Aaron here, died in combat, and Elspeth absolutely lost it, unleashing all of her hidden planeswalker magic power that she'd been hiding away up until this point. She actually brought Aaron back to life, which is pretty sick, I gotta say, but also, as you can imagine, she was then viewed as dishonorable. Death is noble, but cheating something back from the graveyard is absolutely not. So She abandoned her sigils, these sorts of cool coin medallions that showcase your honor and rank and stuff, right? But her military rank was actually something that she held onto or clung to until she helped end Bant's part in the big Conflux War. Realizing though that this was still not really home for her, Elspeth dipped into the multiverse, kind of pretty much pissed off at this point. The Failed Night of Bant. So after this, Big El's planeswalked on over to Dominaria, specifically the tropical marshlands of Urborg. What a clunky word to say. Urborg. Groberg? Orberg? She needed to get that anger out, right? And luckily, she was a sick-ass fighter in a weird little grungy town with, gladiator pits. So, Elspeth started earning money as a bruiser. Which, really, knightly of you, Elspeth, I guess. And everything was going pretty good, I'd say. She was scheming, using her skills for self-gain and stress relief mostly. At least that was what was going on until a giant albino lion appeared in the ring too. Ajani Goldmane was back. He threw off her opponent, Koth, and Elspeth was going to win pretty hard until she saw a strange mark on Koth and in a rage almost struck him down. But Ajani stepped in to stop her. Long story short here, Ajani basically wanted her to keep helping in the conflux. Elspeth said, nah man, get away, I'm absolutely done with that stuff. And then he left, leaving behind her old armor, and it kind of stung as she had not felt worthy of wearing it at this point anymore. So, to distract herself, she talked to Koth about that mark of his instead of, killing him, which morally good choice, I guess. So apparently Elspeth had seen it before, and Koth explained that it was a reminder of how his people fell to the Phyrexians. And to be honest, it kind of makes sense why Elspeth, someone who had a deep history of planeswalking and the Phyrexians, would kind of clock that thing. Cool. So they had some weird back and forths, and eventually Koth communed with an altar and was told to find the mighty planeswalking artificer, Venser. That was actually pretty easy because they just found him and then saw him turning a Phyrexian ship into, and hold your horses, a normal ship? That sounds like a recipe for disaster because nothing Phyrexian is ever good. It's all bad, and it will stay bad. Now, Koth absolutely lost it, sealed Venser's head in a stone mask, and forced him to go to a new plane, a plane of pure machines created by none other than my man, Karn. And thus, Koth, Venser, and a very reluctant Elspeth headed to the unnatural and artificial plane of Mirrodin. The Legend of Elsepth, the Karnwaker. If Bant had been paradise, then Mirrodin was something else entirely. When Elspeth first arrived on the metallic plane of Mirrodin, she initially believed that it might be another world worth protecting. Like, heck yeah, it was pretty weird, it was unnatural in all senses of the word, but the peoples, the creatures, the communities, they were absolutely real and natural. And so the noble knight's true colors began to show as Elspeth fought to defend them. You see, something that you may know if you've already learned about Mirrodin and the creation of Karn, maybe from my video on him, is that something vile, something very bad, and something terrifying was festering beneath Mirrodin. This place was a full-on plane created by Karn after he awoke his Planeswalker spark, but Karn was also, of course, unnatural. He himself was built from the foundations of the very creatures that had slaughtered Elspeth's family, because Karn, at his heart, was actually kind of a Phyrexian. And as a result, a plague was inside his body in the form of a substance known as glistening oil. In a nutshell, it's essentially the corruptive essence of Phyrexia. And Mirrodin was down with the sickness. Ooh, ah, ah. Why did one of my writers put that line in? Why does he do this to me? What did I do to you, man? At first, the corruption seemed pretty subtle. Creatures changed a little bit, some strange machines started appearing, but Elspeth recognized the signs immediately. This was the birth of a new version of the very creatures who had haunted her dreams and basically enslaved her during her childhood. This was the dawn of a new Phyrexia. Now, as Koth guided them through Volshok, his people's lands, he explained the state of this world. A Phyrexian threat was busy consuming Mirrodin, and then they were ambushed, separated, and Elspeth was left alone. And while wandering about, probably just taking in all the cool sights here, Elspeth was taken in by a Volshok shaman who harshly confronted her fear of the Phyrexians. He accused her of cowardice, and as you can expect, this absolutely reignited Elspeth's resolve. She returned to battle, rescuing Koth and Venser from captivity and rejoining their mission to find Karn, the golem planeswalker whose corruption had allowed to Phyrexia start spreading once again. So the trio together infiltrated the Vault of Whispers, witnessing the rise of a massive Phyrexian army preparing to invade the surface levels of the plane. Along the way, they battled some gnarly-looking Phyrexian constructs and encountered the rebel leader Izuri. Then they somehow came into contact also with a very shady guy named Tezzeret, and the group also discovered a surgical laboratory where Elspeth destroyed Phyrexian experimenters and freed Melira, a unique Mirran girl immune to Phyrexian corruption. So protecting Melira became a central aspect of their mission as they fought through overwhelming Phyrexian forces. Steadily continuing their journey towards Mirrodin's core, the companions finally confronted the corrupted Karn. Realizing that he was dying, Venser sacrificed his own life and his Planeswalker Spark to cleanse Karn of the Phyrexian influence. And with Karn restored, he tasked Elspeth, Koth, and their allies with organizing a resistance against the Phyrexian forces that had now conquered Mirrodin. And seeing as her ideals were, all pure and just, because that's Elspeth, she actually joined them. And to be fair to her, the battle wasn't just about protecting yet another world. At this point, it was pretty personal as well. She could potentially prevent the next Elspeth from ever being created, because no young girl raised by her would have her life ruined the way that Elspeth's had. Every single proto-Phyrexian creature they faced was a strong reminder of the monsters who had kidnapped her and stolen her childhood. Every corrupted machine felt like a piece of the nightmare that she had barely escaped. And during this period, Elspeth also reunited with Elspeth's bestie, Ajani, and together they worked alongside other planeswalkers and Mirran leaders in a strong attempt to find Karn and stop the growing corruption. And if you want to get all the juicy details on this adventure, I'd check out the lore for Scars of Mirrodin or just my Karn video. But in a nutshell, the deeper they went, the worse it was. The glistening oil had already infiltrated Mirrodin's very ecosystem. Entire regions and subregions of the plane were just falling under Phyrexian control one after another, and the resistance at this point was just very clearly losing. And eventually, despite their struggles, the worst possible outcome had occurred. Mirrodin fell and Elspeth had failed. And honestly, I can't really blame her. Seriously, dude, she had dedicated her entire life to protecting people from exactly this type of horror. Her time on Bant was preparing her for this very moment. She had fought as hard and long as she could, and still yet, this nightmare that she had once escaped as a child had now consumed another entire world. And then it just all crumbled. The sexiest robot woman I have ever laid my eyes on, Alice Norn, had consolidated power over New Phyrexia and become the new true leader of the plane. In absolute desperation, the last of the Mirran forces launched one final strike against the Phyrexian leadership. Our main man Koth led the mission to plant a devastating spell bomb at a gathering of the Phyrexian leaders, the Creators, but the assault failed miserably. Realizing that defeat was just inevitable, Koth forced Elspeth to escape by sinking her into the ground and shielding her from the very blast. Oh yeah, did I mention that he actually did earth magic? Did I forgot about that? My bad. Anyhow, Elspeth barely managed to planeswalk away, delirious and pretty much near death at this point. Theros, hero of legend. After the very tragic fall of Mirrodin, becoming New Phyrexia, Elspeth was physically and of course emotionally completely drained. She had spent her entire life fighting monsters, searching for peace, and trying to build a world where people could just live without fear. And that's a lot, man. Like, a lot. And Mirrodin had proven something absolutely terrifying to her. Even when heroes fight as hard as they can, evil can still win. So when Elspeth finally planeswalked away from that entire disaster, she really was just looking for somewhere quiet. And that place for her turned out to be Theros, a plane inspired heavily by Greek mythology. We got dragons, satyrs, centaurs, the whole shebang basically. Also, she had been here once before, so it wasn't too wild and too new for her. Oh, and there is a small quirk here that I probably need to explain. Theros is a world where belief itself actually shapes reality. Gods are legitimately born from people's worship, heroes rise to challenge monsters, and when the masses worship them enough, they can literally head into the night sky and become gods in the celestial realm of Nyx. I just quickly looked it up. I was like, what's the card again? It's Nykthos Shrine of Nyx, you know, the one that's very expensive, like 50 bucks. And then, you know, depending on your devotion to a color, you just tap it for that much mana, which can get out of hand pretty quickly, let me tell you. Good card. Very pricey though. Now at first, Theros seemed like exactly what Elspeth actually needed. Faith-driven knights and quests, it's kind of like right up her alley basically. It was almost like Bant, but all mythical and stuff, and heroes traveled the land here defeating hydras and titans, which in this case are like emissaries of the gods, not the Greek titans who predated the gods. Honestly, what's not to love about this plane? It's so good. When are we going back to Theros again? I really want to go back there. So during this time, she also joined the mercenaries of Akros, a city in Theros, and from there sent a message to Ajani as a sign of worship, throwing it in a swamp. Now, I don't know all the details here, just that it was a ritual of sorts. Kind of weird, I guess. Maybe it was a dark ritual. And Elspeth quickly gained a reputation as one of the greatest warriors on that planet, as she should of course, and her growing fame attracted the attention of something very powerful, the sun god Heliod. Now to be fully transparent here, Heliod's a little bit of a loser in my personal humble opinion. Proud, arrogant, obsessed with the idea of divine supremacy, and goes infinite pretty quickly with like some life gain shenanigans and +1 counters. And he actually had, unknowingly, some previous history with Elspeth too. Apparently, when she was in Theros during her initial wandering, she stumbled upon Heliod fighting another god, your favorite boy, Perforos, god of the Forge, and during their clash, a blade known as the Sword of Chaos was knocked from Perforos, and Elspeth just happened to take it before leaving the plane. But now, she was back, wielding this very blade, and it kind of caught the attention of Heliod. You know, Heliod actually tried to clash with Elspeth, but failed because she had some sick magic beyond even the power of the gods, so some nice power scaling there for Elspeth here. So instead, he actually turned the Blade of Chaos, a weapon designed to slay gods, into the spear Godsend, and told her to meet him at his main temple. Wink, wink, right? Now, along the way there, she actually clashed with a bunch of various gods who wanted Godsend themselves, but pushed through anyways. They actually nearly leveled Theros until my main man Krufix, the eldest god and god of time, recalled the gods to Nyx in order to save the entire land. Cruffix, the goat, by the way, what a cool character. And right as Elspeth was about to make it to her destination, she was then confronted by a mythical beast released years ago during Heliod and Perforos's big clash, a massive elder hydra known as Polukranos, the World Eater. Ooh, so many cool cards on this plane, but she still whooped it alongside Heliod's champion Daxos and secured her new spot as Heliod's champion. This spear shall pierce the heavens. Now, while studying amongst the priests of Heliod on Theros, Elspeth spent months and months learning their teachings, but actually found herself most drawn to the time she shared with Daxos. Aw, no, that makes so much sense now while Heliod has the Valentine's Day secret layer thing going on. That explains it. Now, the two gradually grew closer and closer, and despite their relationship being absolutely adorable, Daxos often refused to answer Elspeth's questions about the gods. That's because he relied on Heliod's very strict doctrine to avoid revealing too much to anyone, creating some real tension between them. Eventually, the pair actually almost called it quits over this until Daxos, at some point manned up, apologized, and asked Elspeth to travel with him one more time. When they returned to Melitis, they were met by Anthusa, who dropped the bombshell news that Nyx-born creatures were attacking mortals across the entire land, and to try and solve this problem, they found a sick, nasty ancient sphinx named Madomai, who delivered a dire prophecy showing Akros getting completely leveled. Now, within the city itself, a captured satyr, Xenagos, claimed that he knew how to defeat this army without any direct battle. His plan basically involved flooding the battlefield by raising the river that ran through Akros while the enemy was still distracted, and King Annex created that distraction by challenging the Minotaur leader of that army to a duel, naming Elspeth as his second. And somehow, don't ask me, this strategy actually worked, and the invading army was completely swept away. And during the celebration afterwards, Elspeth and Daxos finally confessed their love. And they were about to actually get, hot and heavy, a little post-battle celebration of no more celibacy, but their happiness was immediately shattered when Xenagos manipulated Elspeth with visions of her traumatic past under the Phyrexians. In panic, she struck out and accidentally killed Daxos. Dude, Xenagos, you are an awful satyr. Let the girl get some. She deserves a break. Did you not listen to my story? Dude, satyrs are supposed to be all about lovemaking and not cock-blocking. So, Xenagos had manipulated the laws of Theros so that he could be worshipped and ascend to godhood himself within Nyx. Citizens, having no loyalty, blamed Elspeth, and she fled into exile instead. Yeah, pretty rough. Now, luckily, the Leonin people of Theros took her in, and thanks to a man named Brimmis, she was actually finally able to reconnect with, you guessed it, best cat and fastest fluff boy, a Johnny Goldmane. Together, they journey to the Temple of Time to defeat Ganondorf, the Temple of Cruffix, so they could make it to Nyx and slay Xenagos. Eventually, the time finally came to enter Nyx, and to do so, she needed to pass an ordeal or trial from the gods. Even though she's stronger than most of the gods, but that's how the laws work on this plane. Now, Johnny wanted her to deal with Thassa, goddess of the sea, because during all this time, they'd been chilling with some mermaids. If you want to look into the entire journey into Nyx lore a little bit deeper, it's actually really fun and really sick. I'm just gonna water it down a little bit here, just so we can get through it. But instead, Elspeth decided to just be metal as hell and went with the death god Erebos' ordeal instead, presumably because he was a deep rival of Heliod, because Heliod had actually abandoned her after the entire Xenagos thing. A little bit spite, never hurt anyone, and alright, this part actually crushed me, I'm not gonna lie. The ordeal manifested in Elspeth seeing her back in Bant with a husband and 2 kids. The daughter urged her to drink from a cup that would actually make this all reality, abandoning the entire mission, but Elspeth, broken-hearted, put her trial ahead, smashed the cup, and thus gained entrance into Nyx. But then luckily, Ajani and her absolutely manhandled Xenagos using the Divine Spear Godsend, and that's what you get for being an asshole, Xenagos. There you got it. But what can I tell you? It of course wasn't good for very long. Elspeth offered her own life in exchange for her love, Daxos, and Erebos actually agreed. But then Ajani came in and thought, they could maybe loophole the system and still escape, but as she and Ajani tried to escape, Heliod appeared in fury and struck Elspeth down with her own divine weapon, Godsend. Yeah, what a real dick move. Ajani still tried to help, but then was forced to leave too because Erebos or Heliod would slay him as well. Do you believe in life after death? Death on Theros, you see, is not the end, as just like in the Greek mythology, there is a life beyond death, the underworld. And Elspeth was on her way down there to hang out with her new bestie, Erebos, who has a cool whip, by the way. That's a legendary artifact enchantment. Good card though. But she was met with something very unexpected and genuinely upsetting. It messed with her in every fiber of her very being, because in the underworld, there wasn't violence, there was just stillness. She wandered the afterlife alongside countless other spirits, gradually losing the sense of who she once had been. But deep inside, something, a fragment of determination, was her spark, which reawakened as she was dragged to the bottom of the underworld's waters by a group of empty husks known as the Returned. And then she made her way over to Elysia, the peaceful fields of Theros' underworld. But Elspeth found her newly found sleep disturbed very soon by a new threat, the planeswalker Ashiok, who had begun spreading nightmares across the entire plane, feeding on the fears of gods and mortals alike. Through these dreams, Elspeth was forced to relive the traumas of her past, something she seems to do a lot, I hope you agree, throughout her story apparently. At least, she's self-reflecting, I guess. And during one nightmare specifically, she grasped Heliod's spear, Crusaor, and just pulled it from the dream itself, which then manifested in reality as one of my favorite equipments, my second favorite equipment after Colossus Hammer, in fact, the weapon Shadow Spear. Ugh, Shadow Spear so good. Slap that baddie on a Ornithopter with a Colossus Hammer and come in for 11 trample lifelink. What is there not to love about this card? And I mean, at least it's good to know that Theros' belief system is still working. Yay. Now, determined to escape the underworld and confront Heliod again, Elspeth gathered allies, drawing the attention of Klothys, the god of destiny. Klothys sent the Nyx-born warrior Calyx to stop her, but Elspeth just repeatedly defeated him as he slowly learned from their encounters. Elspeth then declared Shadow Spear the true Crusaor. As mortals began believing her, Heliod's spear then actually weakened until it just straight up shattered in battle. And this way, actually gaming the system on Theros, Elspeth finally defeated Heliod, and Big Boy Erebos sealed his rival away in the underworld. Turns out he was so amped and so grateful about this, he actually granted Elspeth freedom to return to the world of the living. She was able to meet with Daxos once again, her one love, one last time, and then planeswalked away. But it turns out that Nyx-born Calyx also woke a spark and then chased right after her. Old Capenna, new Capenna. So she was free, finally. Now what? Well, of course, she needed to go visit my man, Ajani Goldmane, and Elspeth reunited with Ajani on Dominaria, where he sort of just casually revealed the name of her long-lost home plane, New Capenna. That's actually really nuts because that means it's still around and not a Phyrexian hellhole, and that meant that they found a way to survive a whole Phyrexian invasion, because that's how Elspeth got captured, and since that was her greatest trauma, this was something that Elspeth deeply and desperately wanted to understand. Hoping to learn how this world she was born in had defeated the machines that haunted her past, she of course did the one reasonable thing and took a plane. No, she planeswalked there. Elspeth found New Capenna nothing like she had expected. The plane had basically become a towering, crime-ruled metropolis controlled by some powerful families, and to really understand where the good stuff was, the anti-Phyrexian delights, she started working some really odd jobs. But this actually didn't last for too long, as she intervened when a group of elite assassins, the Maestros, threatened a shopkeeper she was chilling with, and these guys were imprisoned, and then the vampire lieutenant Angelic invited her to join the Maestros, so she was in. While working for the family, she met their leader, Xander, from Xander's Lounge, which taps for 3 different types of mana, very nice, a total Maestro name by the way, and he introduced Halo. Master Chief was there, Cortana was there, and the Arbiter was there. It was actually pretty sick. Hello? Are you sure about that? Oh, okay. Whatever you say, I guess. Well, apparently I got my halos mixed up. Elspeth actually found that this was a mysterious substance tied to the plane's angelic past. During missions for the Maestros, Elspeth also encountered the planeswalker Vivian Reed while investigating rumors that another family could also produce unlimited Halo, and when the crime family's conflict completely escalated, Elspeth protected a mysterious angelic girl named Giada, heard of her, who had a deep connection to Halo. And unfortunately, when a very powerful demon planeswalker, Obnixilis, appeared here, Giada sacrificed herself, empowering Elspeth with Halo and the sword Luxior, allowing her to drive Obnixilis away. Afterwards, Elspeth then accessed Xander's archives, learning New Capenna's history with the Phyrexians before traveling with Vivian to warn Dominaria. Phyrexia 2, Phyrexia harder. And thank goodness they learned about the Halo, because New Phyrexia was already invading here. TLDR, Elschnorn, Mommy of the Decade, was using a big tree that she grew, Realmbreaker, to invade the entire multiverse. It's based on a different big tree from a different plane, the World Tree, legally distinct from the World Tree, Yggdrasil from Norse mythology, but you get it. For Elspeth, this was the ultimate nightmare. Everything she had feared since her own childhood was happening once again, but this time she wasn't alone. She had lots of friends, some Halo, and a Johnny Goldmane. So Elspeth joined the Gatewatch's effort to slay Phyrexia, but it wasn't working too well, and when she landed on Dominaria, she learned the devastating news that a Johnny had actually been completed, transformed into a full-on Phyrexian servant. The revelation really shook her deeply. I mean, that guy was her homeboy, her Catman, but she channeled that pain into pure determination. Training within Urza's tower, if you have all 3, you have a lot of mana, Elspeth eventually took command of Saheeli's mechanical soldiers during preparations for the coming invasion. Now, when the Phyrexians actually attacked the tower, Elspeth led the defense to buy time for Teferi, Kaya, and Saheeli, a bunch of sick, nasty planeswalkers, to complete their work with the so-called temporal anchor. Basically, they were heading into the past to find out how to destroy the new Phyrexians from Urza, who slayed the old Phyrexians and who definitely did nothing wrong. What a nice and chill and purely good character. Armed with a powerful spell created by Jaya Balar, she destroyed the first wave of attackers and renewed her resolve to someday save a Johnny. During that battle, she wounded Rona and confronted Tezzeret, who surprisingly spared her life. That's very un-Tezzeret-like, if we know anything about him. Now, Flash forward a little bit, and Elspeth guided a coalition of planeswalkers, including Kaya, Kaito, Tavar, Nahiri, and Jace, into the heart of New Phyrexia itself. The group was then scattered by Elesh Norn's defenses, but eventually regrouped in the Furnace Layer with Koth. Remember him? And as they pushed deeper and deeper towards the Seed Core, where that big tree, Realmbreaker, was, their mission completely unraveled. Vraska succumbed to Phyrexia, Jace became infected, and Nahiri sacrificed herself to clear a path forward. Realizing the danger of the Silix, a weapon that Urza had taught Teferi about in the past during the Brothers' War, a weapon they brought to Phyrexia to destroy it, Elspeth had to make a very bold choice. Jace was infected and incapable of being trusted to correctly use the Silix, so Bethy Girl instead incapacitated Jace, seized the artifact, and planeswalked away with it into the Blind Eternities, not a plane. Pretty crazy work. What even happens when you do that? That never has happened before in one of these videos. What is going on in the Blind Eternities? She's glowing! One would assume that when you walk into nothingness, she dies. I would at least. That kind of makes sense. It's like multiversal deep space. You should just die there. But something instead very unexpected happened to Elspeth. Instead of dying, Elspeth was transformed. As you've learned up to this point, throughout her entire life, she had been shaped by truly powerful forces. The angels of Bant, the gods of Theros, and the lingering divine magic deeply connected to New Capenna. There, she experienced a series of visions showing the devastation slowly spreading across the multiverse. She saw New Capenna, where Atraxa was destroying angelic statues, and Theros, where the voice of her love, Doxos, guided her to show her the completed Ajani corrupting the faith of the people. Eventually, a very mysterious voice revealed herself as Sarah, the legendary angel planeswalker, you know, the one whose angels were likely the same angels of old Capenna. Sarah, the angel whose plane was destroyed by Urza during the first Phyrexian invasion. That Sarah, the goated archangel planeswalker? Well, apparently Elspeth was next in line. She was granted the power of an archangel, transforming her into a radiant celestial being. Now transformed, returning to New Phyrexia, Elspeth intercepted Jingin Taxius, buying time for the other planeswalkers to continue their mission against Realmbreaker. She confronted Elesh Norn, and now it was Robot Baddie versus Angel Baddie. During the final fight here, she freed a captured Chandra from Elesh Norn's clutches and aided the planeswalker Ren's plan of merging with Realmbreaker, taking control over New Phyrexia's ability to travel the multiverse. After it was all over, Elspeth briefly remained within the Mirren refugees before then departing once again as their angelic new protector. Cult Storm Mayhem Extreme Edition. Even after her transformation into an angelic, powerful planeswalker, Elspeth's story did not end. In fact, her return to the multiverse created some new complications. Especially so on Theros, the world where her legend had first been forged. Because again, as we said, on Theros, belief shapes reality itself, and after Elspeth's death and miraculous return from the underworld, stories about her began spreading amongst the mortals. Basically, she became Varys' Jesus. Like, some began to treat her not just as a hero, but something closer to a divine figure, and this led to the emergence of small cults devoted straight up to Elspeth, groups who believed that she represented a new form of divine justice beyond just the traditional gods. Meanwhile, in later multiversal conflicts such as the Dragonstorm events on Tarkir, Elspeth continued acting as a powerful protector, using her own angelic abilities to help stabilize entire planes threatened by catastrophic magical forces alongside her best buddy, a Johnny Goldman, right? Who was really going through it after the events of New Phyrexia's downfall in general. By the way, if you want to know the rest of his story and how his events overlap with Elspeth's, you should check out his video right here where I break it all down. It's truly a doozy, man. Otherwise, thanks for watching this very long video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't yet and you've been watching a couple of these videos, why not subscribe to the channel? It means a lot to me. You'll get new videos as soon as they come out and it just helps the channel. Appreciate it. I'll see you in the next one.